right. Well, welcome everyone. This is the local alcohol and drug planning committee meeting for November.
So, Eddie, are you going to teach us about OnPace?
Our executive director, Summer, is here with me as well, and I'm going to do the first couple of slides and then pass it over to Summer. Very briefly, we applied for a federal grant over the summer from HRSA. And lo and behold, we got it, which no one was more surprised than us. And then we had to stand up the program that we said we were going to in the application. So here we are. It's a new training and certification program. It's a 4-year grant. And what our goal is to produce a whole bunch of KDACs, peer support specialists in mental health, and eventually qualified mental health associates that will help staff agencies in Southern Oregon, not just our own, but a lot of the folks on this call hopefully will be producing some really terrific professionals who can help us through this crisis. The grant was $2.2 million, and as I said, HRSA, Behavioral Health Workforce Federal Grant, to create and implement this training program. Goal, alleviate this critical workforce shortage. And briefly, the structure of the program. It's a combination of on-the-job training and classroom learning. Trainees, once they are accepted into the program, begin their education just as if they're starting a job here, because they are. They serve for 3 months as support staff in one of our residential or outpatient training programs. It serves as an introduction to the field of addiction recovery services for the trainee, and it allows us to see if the person will be a good fit for the program. Most of the folks we're trying to have enter the program right now, it's probably no surprise to any of you who are trying to hire right now that evening and weekend shifts, and for residential programs, overnight shifts are what we need to fill. So if applicants have the flexibility to work those shifts, it might allow for a quicker entry into the program, but that doesn't mean we can't admit folks who can only work day shifts for whatever reason. The first formal training is a 40-hour mental health peer service specialist training. We're using intentional peer support through folk time for these trainings. And I just want to take a minute to emphasize that it's a mental health peer training. The addiction peer training is offered by Rogue Retreat, Recovery Opportunity Center with Doug Gould. Ideally, perhaps we have peers out there who have both the mental health and the addiction peer services training, so they can be that much more amazing in their jobs, because as we know, co-occurring disorder is such a prevalent thing that we're seeing, that the more training for the peers, the better. Now, some of the trainees may choose to pause their training there and begin working in peer services. They may have caught the fire and say, I'm ready to get out there and see what this training can do for me. Most of the trainees will likely continue on towards their KDAC certification, and they'll spend the next 12 to 15 months working in clinical rotations across our 9 programs, as well as La Clinica's Birch Grove, as well as Oasis, in addition to the classroom instruction. Our 9 programs, we're including our transitional housing in there as well, since we want to get them trained in outpatient, residential, transitional housing, peer work, all of that. So in total, the KDAC trainees have to complete 150 education hours, 1,000 supervised experience hours. That's why it's 12 to 15 months to get that KDAC, because you have to accumulate those supervised experience hours to be able to test for the KDAC 1 level. Cost of the program, this is one of the most attractive parts of the program, hopefully, is that there's no tuition. That's what the grant covers. Our trainees are compensated by the hourly wages for their experiential work that they start out in their first 3 months, and then continue partially through the rest of their program. And then the grant also provides stipends to cover the cost of classroom training, books, and other materials. Ideally, we're hoping that participants are ready to devote full time to this program. It's possible to work a part-time job, but ideally your employer would have to be pretty darn flexible because you're pivoting between different programs. Your shifts might change. You have to be available for the classroom training. So ideally, we want a full-time participation, and we're compensating people so they can put everything else aside and just focus on the program. As we said before, the length of the program, the time to achieve peer service certification is 3 months for full program participants, or it's possible to do 1 week just to attend that peer service mental health peer training. The time to gain a certification as a KDAC, approximately 18 months. We hope to eventually be able to help folks who might just need the 150 hours of training or less. Or perhaps they just need the apprenticeship. They've had the training, they just haven't accumulated the hours. We're not quite there yet because we're just in our first cohort. So we're working out a lot of the wrinkles of the program. The QMHA certification, we're hoping that comes, I believe, in either year 2 or 3, once we get the rest of the program stood up. Requires a combination of training and experience equivalent to 3 years. So people who join QMHA program, they'll have different completion dates depending on what kind of experience they come into the program with.
So what you're looking at here, it's broken into level 1 and level 2. In the first 3 months, we have the kickoff training is a basic trauma-informed care, ACEs, person-centered planning kind of training. And then we have the intentional peer support training that hopefully we'll be able to stack, peers will be able to stack credentials, and people who have lived experience with both mental health and addiction will be able to stack their credentials this way. Then during this first 3-month period, they're still, if they're a full program participant, they're still working in one of our programs certain hours so that they still get benefits. And they're also doing a 100-hour rotation for experiential learning. And they're going to community partners and different programs so that they can see the whole continuum of care and how everything fits together during this period of time, and then meeting twice a month to talk about their experiences. Once they get it further on and they decide, whether or not they're going to continue towards the KDAC, that's when we have the foundation trainings. And what was really exciting originally when we applied for this, we assumed we were going to do 90% of the trainings in-house and we were all going to be scrambling and trying to do it. But if you look at the roster of people who are training, it's really turned into something a lot more than we originally thought it would. We have somebody from, we have options and choices and Colpia and Phoenix and the ARC and a whole list of different agencies that are coming in to provide the core foundation trainings, which hopefully will keep it from becoming about, learning how to work at OnTrack. When you have outside trainers doing the trainings, then it stays purely clinical and it doesn't turn into policies and procedures and processes. So this was really exciting and is almost all confirmed and mapped out. Once they get through these foundation trainings, during this time, there's trainings 1 or 2 days a week, and they're still working in their programs on the other days. We have it structured around that so they can still work, and they attend these trainings, and we provide the materials that go with them. So they come out of the trainings with ASAM manuals and DSMs and things like that. Then after they're completed with this, they move into level 2. And this is when they move from just taking the kind of education classroom trainings into the full apprenticeship. So they would be doing the actual experiential work or the actual clinical work, co-facilitating groups and assessments and starting to do some individual work. And that program goes for, it really depends on how fast somebody accumulates their hours and how much experience they had coming in. But this is where they have to get 1,000 hours for their KDAC. And then because we're required to be a registered apprenticeship site with the federal government, there has to be 2,000 hours somehow mixed into this whole thing. So during this time, they're doing the clinical work, and the trainings here are more specific clinical model trainings like cognitive behavioral and DBT, relapse prevention, the sorts of things that they might be sitting in and co-facilitating groups that incorporate these things. And then they'll have these different classroom trainings that are kind of lining up with their experience as they're getting it. And then hopefully by the end of this time, people will be finishing out their hours at different paces and they'll be able to test for their KDAC. What will be coming soon and what we really hope to be able to expand by year 2 is for people who are working in other agencies and just need certain trainings. That I'll publish the dates and times of all of the trainings that are open to the public, which is all of these ones that you're seeing here. So that if people have a staff member that maybe they just need, pharmacology, or they just need infectious disease risk assessment or something like that, that'll be published out to folks so that we can just incorporate other, people who are outside of the program into those trainings when it's available. And then by next year, we're hoping to be able to have a true hybrid option so that folks that are in like frontier and rural parts of the state that might have more difficulty accessing trainings will be able to join either as full participants while working, in their remote sites, or just in, one class at a time, or whatever combination where, people need.
We've got a couple of FAQs that have come up on this final slide. Early career job seekers, mid-career applicants, and as Summer just said, when we're fully up and running, can accept students who only need certain classes. Prerequisites, high school diploma, GED. The reason for the 23 years of age is that that's what our insurance requires. All of our staff who enter this program are going to need to be able to drive and possess a valid Oregon driver's license. So, and for some reason, our insurance requires people to be 23 years of age if they're driving our vehicles. Also a base skills assessment, writing sample, and interview. And we do require everybody to be vaccinated. Ideally, after this first cohort, we have another cohort of 15, which will begin late winter of 2022. And then the program is designed to have 15 students per cohort per year, or 30 students per calendar year. And this is a link where you can find out a little more information, also the application form to become part of the program.
This is Mike O'Malley. I do have one question. I was a little unclear at the very beginning of your presentation. Great program. It sounds very exciting. Over my 45 years, the schism between mental health and addictions, as everybody on this group knows, is pretty apparent, both from funding and clinical perspective. And I noted you said something about a separate process for addiction professionals and for mental health professionals. And I wonder if you could just go over that just briefly again. And my hope is, of course, that anything that's presented really does come from a holistic co-occurring disorders perspective on this training. Yes,
thank you. That's a good question. So the peer training has to be separate until we can get the state to approve a co-occurring peer training, since so many peers have lived experience with both mental health and addiction, but the state has separated that very clearly. So it has to be 2 separate trainings. And since there's a couple of local agencies that already offer the certified recovery mentor training, we went with the intentional peer support, which is for mental health, so that we could provide another service that instead of duplicating. The actual classroom trainings, yes, they are, the list of trainers are, most can give CEUs for mental health and for addiction. Our goal is to be able to open these up for QMHPs who need CEUs for licensure, or and the QMHAs. So most of the class, well, all of the classes will be combined. If you're pursuing your QMHA or your KDAC, you're going to be in the same trainings, but maybe at a different frequency. And there might be specialty online editions that people have to take in order to fulfill all the requirements to be a QMHA, because it's a longer process. But our goal is to have all of the trainings be presented from a whole person perspective, not addiction versus mental health.
I'm wondering if I can audit any of these courses, like sit in on Curtis Ziegler's class. I mean, it just looks amazing. You've got an all-star group of trainers in there, and I'm a little bit envious, but also just so much respect for what you guys have put together. What a cool group of classes and presenters.
We will definitely send out the list and how many slots we have available once that's finalized. Really what it comes down to is how many people I can safely put in our training room and keep everybody 6 feet apart. And then we'll know how many slots we have out there, and I'll definitely publish those as soon as we know. But
Thank
you
you
can't
for the
just
kind
crash the
word.
party and join all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you sign up.
If you bring good snacks, Eric, it's everything's open.
You know, one thing I learned at La Clinica, I don't know, like a zillion years ago, Kim Ovison was our first behaviorist, and she's a KDAC, as you know. So when she first came, people were like, who's this person? What do they do? You know, and so she had to kind of sell what she could do in primary care. Hopefully we're just, you know, primary care doesn't get it or something. But anyway, over the years, and then we ended up with a behavioral health team of 20 people, including some KDACs. So there's this process of not only having the qualifications, but learning how to ingratiate yourself into your setting. That isn't a small thing. So I'll just mention that. It's not really, I don't know if that's part of the curriculum or not, but just dealing with different settings.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sarah. I'd like to piggyback off on that. Trying to bridge the gap of both sides for so many years, and having such a schism at the funding level, as it still is apparent in this state. I get the privilege of going around the country and looking at different operations because of my accreditation surveyor process. The thing is, it's still not being taught together. And I think it's like, I hope that the courses and the trainers, you've got some great trainers. I just want to echo everybody else's. That curriculum looks like dynamite, and knowing some of those people and know what good teachers they are, I'm just really excited for you. But I just hope everybody, when you get the teachers all together, say, hey, look, you got to accept the other guilds. You know, we all come from different guilds and different points of view, but it's a whole person we're looking at. And I just hope that's an overarching kind of theme to all of what you do. I'm excited for it.
Thank you. And yes, that's one of the biggest priorities, and strategically and how it flows, and plugging that in throughout is really important.
Feel free to send emails or call if any other questions come up. You know where to find us. Thank you for the positive words. Really appreciate it.
Thank you both. It's incredible that we have this in our community now. Thank you so much. Okay, I guess this is it until December, which is a week earlier than our normal cadence due to the holiday.